Right folks, today I have had delivery of the head gasket, the BMW 7150, even though it comes with new dowels, which isn't necessary. I think it refers to, I think 91, any Rover with a K series that has plastic dowels from about 1991 to around 2000, 2001-ish. To be honest with you, most of them won't have plastic dowels now. They'd have been replaced with metal dowels. So I think replacing these dowels are kind of like a bit of a thing of the past, really. Any K series after 2001 should have metal dowels like mine, and they look fine. If they don't look damaged or anything, then you don't need to replace them. But the elastomer gasket should be the right one for the actual job. And then we have the rocker cover gasket. Now, unfortunately, because of how bad I find eBay sellers or the couriers are becoming, I can't put that on because the cylinder head has been literally dried to infinity of oil with carb cleaner to get rid of any excess carbon and a little bit of sludge, a little bit too much of too much to feel comfortable about, but we've done as best a job as we can. The head doesn't need skimming as far as I can see. It's flat, it's cleaned up nicely, and I have no issues with putting that straight on. So yeah, because the engine oil has not arrived, I can't really put the rocker cover gasket on. I can't put the camshaft cover back on. So I'm only going to do the head today, so it's going to be a bit of a shorter video. But has anybody kind of had experiences with eBay recently? I mean, last year I could say that out of 10 orders, let's say, 8 of them would get to me within the due dates. Maybe the odd one or two wouldn't, or maybe the odd one goes missing, but eventually after a couple of days they do get to me. Now it's like 5 or 6 out of 10, and I'm chasing up the oil, I'm chasing up a fuel filter, because I think there was a seller who I bought the fuel filter from, and what I think has happened is he hasn't got the item and he's had to order it in, and I think that is fraud. Basically, you're taking my money thinking that thinking that you've got it in stock when you haven't. It's in some big warehouse and they've got to order it from that warehouse to come to another place and then send it to me. Why would you do that? I'm sorry, I think eBay sellers need to be caught out with that. Yeah, they claim that it's the couriers, and I definitely think the couriers put their hands in the till sometimes, but I think the eBay sellers are getting worse. So big rant there. And it is frustrating being someone who works on his own cars, orders tools, resources and parts, and this is the sort of job where I need most things in order to do it. Now, I haven't got the timing belt stuff yet, as when this video comes out. All I've got is literally that. Oh, and I've also got the that feels a bit bent to me, but that will flatten down. I've also got the head bolts, which came really promptly actually. 25 quid for all of them, and it came really promptly, DHL. I was really pleased about that. That gasket was about 15 quid, the rocker cover was about 15 as well. BMW 750s, quite a few manufacturers make them now, but as long as it's the elastomer one, you've got no problems. So yeah, we're just going to put the head back on today. Let's crack on. Just a final step, make sure the faces are clean. I've just gone over with some contact cleaner. I have run out of carb cleaner typically. I just make it all clean around the dowels and everything. I've sucked all the excess coolant down here. It's only tiny bits. Now, number 2 is clean. I've tried to get a scraper. Number 3 is not bad. Number 1 is not great. Number 4 is this carbon here. You try and scrape that off. And to be fair, they do say in the manual for some reason to put grease around the outside so the carbon doesn't go down the side. I suppose what they mean is it could scratch the ball, but I doubt it. I doubt it, because what would happen is if the carbon gets stuck between the piston ring, it's just sitting there on top of the piston ring. No, I wouldn't worry about that. At the end of the day, it's as clean as what it can be, and that's just the most important thing from a DIY perspective, and doing it properly. Right, first one. This is a new gasket. The thing is, it doesn't say which side is top, but it's fairly obvious. You're not going to get it the wrong way around. It just won't fit on properly. So you just place it on between the dowels. Squeeze it on. There we go. Okay. That's a flush there. Okay. Done. Position. That's it. This isn't quite in. We're finally in. Right, now that's in. Head bolts, brand new. We're going to oil the threads. This is important. We must oil the threads, and we must put grease at the bottom of the head, because when you're torquing them up, they're going to need that grease to help actually turn them. The tightening sequence is I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So go in and out, but they have to be torqued in stages. Stage 1, 20 Newton meters. Then you put a white paint mark, which I will do, and then you have to turn them 180, then wait a bit, then 180 and wait a bit. Now the advice I've been given is 20 Newton meters, go and have a tea break for half an hour, let it settle, then 90 degrees followed by a few minutes, then another 90 degrees, then another few minutes, then 90, a few minutes, and then the final 90, because it allows the head to settle down more nicely instead of doing a full 180. I knew somebody who tried to do a 360 and that did not pan out well. They do not like that. So yeah, let's follow that sequence and let's hope it all goes according to plan. Goes number 3. Incredible how far these bolts could potentially stretch, and there's a huge amount of thread on these, but you don't want to take a risk. Yeah, I think that's what this is all about. Just a learning curve. I just hope. I did do a test where I put a ruler across the head in all different directions, all the important directions, and I think I've got 2 straight rulers. The first one wasn't very straight. I actually did a test where I actually tested the straightness of the ruler, and no wonder there was light shining through. It wasn't straight itself. The second one was much better, so I wasn't so concerned about that one. So yeah, there wasn't much at all. I know they say, well, that could be more than enough to have a ruined head. I'm truth is, this head has not overheated as far as I know, and as far as I've seen, there'd be more obvious signs of warping. There really would be. Be score marks everywhere, there'd be heat build up. And the fact is, taking the car on the test run suggested that it was fine. I know cars, when they overheat, they really do perform quite badly after that. This one, no. The thermostat being stuck could have been a result of just being inactive over the last 2 years. And that's how simple it can get, really. Some people sing a song when they're doing things like this, but I'm not a singer. I don't have a vocal cord in my body as such. The last one's in, and I'll put the last few in and we'll start doing the stages. Or perhaps not, maybe I should just rub it on. What should I talk about? The K series as an engine. I think most people recognise it was pretty advanced, whether you love it or hate it. It was a pretty advanced engine. Most people recognise it as such. Ford followed with the Z-Tech engines. Well, the Sigma engine was actually the first all-aluminium engine that came out in 1995. The K series was years ahead of everybody else. But by the mid to late 90s, everybody had caught up, and that was the problem Rover had. I think that's why the R8 was such a success, really. It was built better than previous cars on the British Leyland, the Austin Rover Group. Showed new ways, efficient ways of working. And then you had the engine. What was not to like about an R8? But then when you had the 25, well, the 400, the R3 and the HHR, things were okay, but things weren't as rosy. And then obviously BMW took over. It was really bad days because they tried to revamp the 200 and 400 as the 25 and 45, and quite frankly it was a bit too late. They were obviously planning to replace the cars, but then do you think that BMW just came for the Mini? I think so. I definitely think so. I think they had absolutely no intention of bailing Rover out. Yeah, people say, you know, okay, give them credit. They put a lot of money into Rover when they didn't really need to, if they were just going to ransack it. But the truth is, you can't just come and ransack a major car manufacturer. There would have been quite an uproar, and I think the buying public would have probably showed that as well. They'd have probably stopped buying them Rovers altogether if there'd have been any inkling of that. And people were still patriotic back in the day, even though I think one of the causes that Rover isn't around is because the great British public became a bit more easy taken in by cheapness. Maybe that's too harsh. Anyway, this is all done. Right, better torque them up then. Stage 1, 20 Newton meters. Get the torque wrench, Andrew. Oh, actually, I can't put this bolt down, and neither can I put this one down, because I need to turn the cams again. Right, well, out that comes, and no doubt the cams are going to click by themselves. They do tend to spring where they want to go, but as long as you know which way they've gone, it's all good. Just going to turn that camshaft to the right. There we go. It's just sprung out. There we go. Oh, you're going to go in? No. Still not got in. There you go. Completely out the way now. So, you are free. Can you please? Yep. Right, next one. might be a bit tight. There we go. Just turn it. There's no chance of the valves clashing with the pistons before you say this. And this is what most people kind of have to do to get it hooked in. But if you saw how far the pistons are down, there we go. Good. If you've seen how far the pistons are down, the valves only come down about that much. The pistons are that far down. That's why you set the safe position with the timing, and you can do this no problems. You just got to make sure you remember that I've turned this cam that way and this cam that way, but the red pointers will come back on once we've done the torquing up. You don't have to have the camshafts in the right position to torque the head up. It's only when you actually do the timing that becomes essential. Wind these in very carefully by hand. Just wind them in. Okay. Well, actually, let's do this properly. Let's follow the tightening sequence if we're going to be ultra. Well, do it properly for a start and get it in. Yeah, I think, in my opinion, the Mini was all that BMW wanted. Because if you look at, I know that the K series, as advanced an engine it was by the late 90s, everybody had caught up, and it did have known head gasket faults, which put a lot of people off. Now BMW could have easily said, look, we don't want the K series, we don't believe in it. But the truth is, I don't think that was the case. I think it was a case that they had to make their own engine because they knew that they were going to take the Mini away from Rover. So they were going to let Rover do all the design work. Obviously BMW would have input in it because it was the, if you know it's going to be your car going forwards, not Rover's, well, of course you're going to have input in it, but you're going to make the most of Rover's experience. But the one thing you need is the K series, because there's no way you could have taken the K series. Rover would have gone bust instantly if BMW had taken the K series. And to be fair, why would they want the K series? It was already had a bad reputation as it was. So they came up with a partnership with Chrysler, and yeah, I think it was Rover, Chrysler and BMW made a partnership to design what was to be called the Tritec engine, the original engine in the R50-53 Mini. And that engine was manufactured in Brazil. I'll tell you what, it was a bit more of an archaic engine. It was single overhead cam, cast iron block, nowhere near as advanced as the K series. So you asked the question why they thought the K series wasn't good enough. Why did BMW not think, do you know what, we can use the K series, we just need to improve it. Look what the Chinese have done to the K series, well now the N series, and it still lives on to this day. So clearly it wasn't that bad an engine. So clearly they knew what they were up to. That engine was probably the giveaway. If they really wanted to keep the Mini, keep Rover and not try and take the Mini with them, they'd have used the K series in the R50 Mini. That for me, I know the Mini, the R50-53 Mini is very, very different to the Minis of even the second generation Minis that came out in 2007. The ones with essentially Peugeot engines. And they're they're a million miles away from the Minis now. I think they've completely lost touch of exactly what they're meant to be. Mini. They're not Minis like every other car. They're just huge. Yesterday, I know this isn't the time of this filming, but what would have been a month or so ago, Ford have announced that they're ditching the Fiesta next year. I mean, honestly, in favour of the Puma. I mean, is that a joke? I think this SUV thing is going to stop very soon. I think people will realise that actually they're not that cool. Yeah, they'll realise they're not that cool, and I think people will look for smaller cars going forwards, particularly with electric cars now. I think SUV was mainly a thing for practicality, apparently, but we shall soon see. But this crave of SUVs really just bore me to death. There's nothing wrong with a hatchback, whether it's a Rover 45, a Ford Focus, Astra. It really is that simple. Right, they are now tightened down by hand. I'm just going to clean around the threads because there's excess grease. Then we're going to torque it up. Right, I've got my 1/4 inch torque wrench with a couple of adapters just to make sure that the because the E12 socket I've got is only a 3/8, so I'm using a 3/8 bar, very short but very precise. Right, let's just torque it up. Done. That's clicked. Second one. Got very little force, just downward pressure with your hand. Make sure everything is nice and true. Okay. Right. Lovely. Number 3, up here. You get the feel of when it's just about to click. 4. Yeah, so for me, the R50/53 Mini, I don't consider it a very British car, despite the fact that Rover, it was pretty much a Rover BMW, it was a Rover BMW product, but because it was tainted with the fact that BMW owned the car, and there was no K series, for me there wasn't as much Britishness as there should have been. Put it this way, it had done the car no harm to have the K series. I think it would have been a brilliant engine just to start off with. If BMW wanted to, I think BMW had a load of their new generation engines around 2005, 2006, and some of which they did put in the Mini, but only very later on. The K series would have been good up to around this time, you know, 2005, 2006 at least, before they needed to either update it or replace it with their own engines, but they didn't. Sadly, bit of a nasty feeling in the mouth, and I mean, most people have forgotten, but those who work at Rover, and I was brought up next door to Longbridge. I mean literally next door, in an estate not far from Longbridge. If anybody is from Birmingham who's watching this, Northfield, Westheath, you get the picture. That's where I was brought up. Well, kind of on the border of Westheath, Northfield actually. But Longbridge, MG Rover was at the heart of the whole community, and it's, when you go down there, it's just a big shopping centre now. I mean, it's nice, but it's just dead. As a car person, you just think what it was is now doesn't exist. Lovely. So yeah, it's kind of happened that way over time, and yeah, we've all got used to it, but I really do think that we miss having a British car manufacturer. Right, so we're going to just wait for it to all settle down. Might need to do a bit more cleaning, because I'm going to show you this actually. Pick it up, camera. That is basically what happens when you don't change your engine oil regularly. Now, it's only sludge. I can crush it with my hand and it dissolves. Now, this sort of stuff you can clear it up with like engine flushes. Well, I don't recommend that, because if that builds up in one place, it could block an oil gallery, and some of the oil galleries are very small. Now, that is containable because they're only in little pieces at the moment. The best way of doing it, and this is what I'm going to do, is successive oil changes. So the oil that I've ordered, it's going in, hopefully the car will run and drive, we'll get the MOT done, drive it for a couple of months, then we change the oil and filter again. That is a quick succession. So basically what I'm doing is running in oil the old-fashioned way. I think you've got to, particularly with a head gasket and everything, you've got to just check and have that service. If a garage did a head gasket, most good garages, as part of the cost of what you're paying, they'll say bring it back in about 2 or 3 months time, depending on your mileage of course, and we'll just give it a glance. And they'll do that for nothing, because that's what you're paying for as a customer in your first bill, and they should do that, but a lot don't bother. Anyway, let's give it a few minutes. Right, while we're waiting, we can pop on this bracket. It's just 2 10mm bolts. It just goes over and covers the seal at the end of the cam. We'll start putting all this back together gradually as we sort this out, just while we're waiting another 10 minutes for that to settle. Battery trays do make a good parts tray and tools. I've got my exhaust bolts, and these 2 that go on the heat shield are 10mm. Oh, I've left that inside. We've got the bolts there. I'll just give them a bit of a clean up before we fit them. And before we fit the manifold, just make sure the surface is clean. I didn't really sand it down because it's stuck on the car. That would be a pain to remove actually, because you've got the always got the bolts that link the manifold to the pipe, and I don't want to be messing with that because that could cost me even more money. Just make sure it's all clean, and then we can hook it back up. Remember, there is actually the lambda sensor cable, which is here where my finger is, this, right? Make sure you don't catch that when you put the manifold on. That is quite easy to do, so we'll just hook it up quickly. Right. With the gasket, remember the flat side goes on the engine side. It's got this cut out to this side of the car, so we just slip it under and get it on the studs. Easy peasy. Right, that's on. Now we can just get the manifold. He says, but I can't, because I've got to take the aircon pipe out yet again. Just take the bolt for the aircon pipe. I'm afraid you have to be aware, if you want to do this job, you've got to disturb the aircon system. There's just no way of going about this without disturbing the pipe. So, and now I've just discovered it to go. Right, finally, that is now out, so we can move the pipe just a little bit, and then we can just enough to get this on. Simple as you like. Now, just put that bolt over there for now, and we'll just put all the nuts back on. In fact, I'm going to give some of these a bit of a clean before we put them back on. Nuts can go back on. Do a bit of a wire brush. The threads are a bit funny, but they'll do for now. They're always tight. And just put that one underneath. Sometimes I need to employ a child. I mean, I haven't, and don't get me wrong, I've dropped another bolt. Where the hell's that gone now? You know, when you drop a bolt and you hear it hit the floor, it's quite a reassuring sound. It means that it's not stuck somewhere between where I am and the floor. That's not what's happened here. It's stuck between the compressor and the body, and my God, I'm going to have to get the thinnest pickup tool ever. Don't do this. Watch that you don't drop that nut down there. Just tightening all the bolts up. If you want to torque them up 45 Newton meters, that says the book. We'll see if that's possible, because sometimes you just can't get access with a torque wrench. It's all good in the factory when it's all done before it goes in the car, but on the car it's like, right. Okay, they're all tightened. So I'm going to go and get my torque wrench. I'll be able to get to that. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's done. Done, bolted in. Right, I think we can put the aircon pipe back on and get the heat shield on potentially. I might have to put a stud in first. If I remember rightly, there's a stud that goes, there's two studs for the alternator bracket, one here and one here. Actually, I'll show you more. Okay, when you're putting things back together, that's all torqued up now. We've got two bolts for the alternator bracket, right? Now, if I remember, that one has to go in to get the heat shield on. The heat shield hooks onto that bit, and then you bolt it in, and then the lower bolt down there, and then obviously we can put this aircon pipe back on. We can put it back on now actually because we don't need it there, but I'll just keep it off to get the heat shield on, because the gap is tight still. Right, I've just had to tap the end of that thread, because when I used a stud extractor to get it out in the previous video, unfortunately that footage was lost shamefully. I've had to re-tap the end of it just so that the nut will actually spin on very nicely and yield. So that nut goes there. Yeah, so we just tap this in, and we've come to the end of the thread. There we go. That is back in. Now I need to get the heat shield now. I did give this tin shield a bit of a clean up off camera. There was a lot of oil from the rocker cover literally getting everywhere. It was, the compressor was covered, if you remember the earlier videos. And this is part of the reason why this aircon pipe is essential to be moved. Now I've got it in the right position there. I wonder the reason why it's cracked at the bottom is because of the way I took it out. I mean, to be fair, that's probably part of the course. There you go. Now, essentially, I have to put the bracket on before I put that on. So I might as well actually do that at the same time. Nice new shiny bracket, all cleaned up and not degunked. So we put that on first. We've got a bolt that goes through to the other side. Just put that through and then thread that in. I'll just put that in loosely. Then the heat shield, then that nut as well. Fantastic. It's all going together like Lego. Too soon, Andrew. Okay. Make sure that is there. Lovely. I'll just put them two bolts in. That's done. I'm not going to torque it up yet. We're going to do the head bolts now. Nice new shiny bracket, all cleaned up and not degunked. So we put that on first. We've got a bolt that goes through to the other side. Just put that through and then thread that in. I'll just put that in loosely. Then the heat shield, then that nut as well. Lovely. I'll just put them two bolts in. That's done. I'm not going to torque it up yet. We're going to do the head bolts now. And then we get our aircon pipe bolt back in. Okay. And we've basically done this front end. I just haven't tightened these up. I don't know what torque it is. I'll go and look it up. And then next job, this. Right, for those of you interested, that bolt was 35 Newton meters from the compressor to the union pipe. Anyway, I've put paint marks at 12 o'clock on all of the bolts. I have some white paint and just put it on. I'll just use a pick to wipe the paint on. Okay, so we're going to use those marks to turn 90 degrees. First of all, we're going to use a breaker bar to do that. Do it gently. Again, follow the tightening sequence. So if we do this, okay, I'm only doing 90 degrees. And that's it. Do it in whatever angle is comfortable to you. I'm doing it from this side because doing it this way is my strength. Whereas doing it from this is a bit awkward. Make it easy for yourself. The marks will give you a compass. Yeah, okay. Leave it there, and you do that 3 more times. We'll come back when I've done it the 4th time. Right, there it goes. Bottoms up. That was tight. Okay. This one. Woo. Now that's the stretch. Woo. Now that you can hear is a stretch on the bolt. I thought for a second that one had snapped, but that is literally how much they stretch. That one has yielded quite nicely. Right, number 5. Remember, look at the position, the angle that you break it. It's easy to do it with a breaker bar, and you're going to need one. By stage 3 and definitely stage 4, you're going to need this. So just pay attention to the angle at which your breaker bar is, and then work out 90 degrees from there. Bingo, straight on. Pretty much straight on? Yes. Right, now this one. Dead on. That was easier. This one. Easy. Pay attention to your marks, because I noticed on the last round a couple of the bolts have gone fractionally more than 90 degrees. So if that's the case, do slightly less than 90 on the next one. I know it's not, you know, strictly speaking what you should be doing, but you've got to make sure they're all even at the end of the day. That's on. And this one. Oops, sorry about that. Done. Okay, so I just had to go back and just nip this one. This one was the worst one in terms of stretching. It felt like I was going to snap the bolt way before it reached northwards, where the point where the paint mark should be for 360 degrees. But as you can see, all the paint marks are at the north. Don't worry about that one, it was slightly off to start with. So it does help to actually get it bang on. North, north, north now, north, north. Let it settle now. We are done. I'm going to put a piece of cardboard, cling film just for safety, and we can start putting the timing belt on. Next thing, I wish that the inlet gasket was had arrived, because I could put that on as well as the exhaust bit, but it's now starting to look like an engine again, as opposed to a big block of aluminium sitting at the bottom of this engine bay. Good day all. I'll see you next time.